All right, hello everyone. So today I'm going to be playing a game for you that you may not have heard of. It's Aeterna Noctis. This is a relatively new Metroidvania that came out just about 9 months ago, in December of 2021. And this game is fantastic. I absolutely love it. It's got some real cool speed tech, and I think it would be pretty fun to be able to showcase. So there's multiple difficulty modes in this game. You're actually able to switch between them at any time. We're going to be playing on the Aeterna difficulty mode, which is the easier of the two modes tonight. You'll see that this is still far from an easy game. This game is known for being quite challenging, so we're going to have a good time. But let's get started here. Time will start as I select the difficulty here, so let's get in. Alrighty, and the live split will kick in just a minute here. There are some opening cutscenes. Luckily, almost all of the cutscenes in this game are skippable, which makes this much more pleasant to speedrun. There are a lot of cutscenes. This game is actually extremely massive. So this is one of the biggest games I think I've ever played. My casual playthrough was close to 100 hours, and the speedrun is long as a result. There's a lot to this game, and tons of different abilities, lots of really cool movement, lots of very, very gorgeous areas. I think it's a fascinating game to play, to watch. It's just a great time all around. So yeah, you may notice on the live split timer I have up, we are actually comparing against in-game time and not RTA. So the timer may not look like it would, like maybe you're used to. For example, it's not counting centiseconds, and you'll notice something strange here as I go through transitions. The time actually sometimes counts down. That's because of how the timer in this game works, the in-game timer. It actually only counts in increments of 5 seconds. So this creates kind of some interesting strats, as the game is primarily timed IGT for now, where we might do something that basically seems to lose time, but actually doesn't because of the way the timer works. Like, for example, dipping into a room really quickly can save time, or stopping to kill an enemy when you have a few extra seconds to play with. So yeah, the early parts of this game, much like any Metroidvania, are going to be a lot of walking. We will pick up a few extra upgrades along our path. The thing I just picked up there is a heart fragment. This is basically just the health. You see we start with 4 health, and that can go up to, I believe, 10 or 11. In this run, we're actually going to get up to 7, and that's mostly as a safety. Some of the later bosses, especially even in the easier mode of this game, are extremely difficult. Whoops. So I will also be going out of my way throughout, especially the first half of this run, to pick up a lot of these items that I'm getting right now. These are called mirror fragments. I need about 20 of them to pick up an upgrade halfway through the run, which will be increasing our damage by a huge amount. So yeah, a lot of this early game, again, going to be walking, but luckily the very first ability we're going to get in this game is the dash, and we're going to come up on that pretty soon here. You may notice already this game is pretty large. This is the very first area, and we're still not even halfway through it. So one thing about this game is it's got tons and tons of areas and tons of enemies and bosses, and it's a good time. All right, we're going to meet Death here. Death is going to bring us into an area that we'll see a few times called the Temple of the Kings. This is sort of the central hub for upgrades in this game when you're playing casually. We're actually only going to see it 3 times as we go through this game. We only need 3 of the upgrades that are housed here. Most of our other upgrades will come from bosses, or we'll purchase them in shops, or pick them up in the overworld. But casually, you'll spend a lot of time in here. The way this is structured is there are 12 distinct doors, and in each one is a particular upgrade. The first one we have here is going to be our dash, and this is very, very essential, so we'll pick it up. One thing that each of these doors has in common is the first checkpoint is one that actually saves your progress. or your location, we are going to actually skip over that. All the other checkpoints will not save our location, and after we pick up the final upgrade in this area, which is the dash, we will simply save and quit, and that will actually bring us all the way back to the throne that we transported in here on. So that's going to save us a lot of time. There's going to be a lot of these positions throughout the game where we are going to perform a checkpoint skip. All three of the doors that we enter are examples of this, but there's a lot of places in the overworld where that's going to be important as well. If you're fast here, you can make these cycles, but I am taking a slightly slower and slightly safer approach. There's not too much happening in some of these first few splits, so an extra cycle is not too bad. So yeah, this is our dash ability. Throughout the game, this is one thing that really I struggled with when I first played this game. When you get the dash ability to start with, it actually has quite a significant cooldown, and it's very easy to think that your dash is ready before it actually is. Luckily, there is an upgrade tree in this game, and a lot of the upgrades will actually improve our dash cooldown and allow us to move faster. Okay, so you see there, because I skipped that first checkpoint, I'm able to quit out straight to this throne. And the way thrones work in this game is they actually work as warp points. So fast travel is built into this game from the very beginning. You can warp to any throne that you've sat on previously, or not even sat on, but simply activated. So you don't even need to necessarily sit down, just pass by a throne, and you can warp back to it from any other throne in the game. This is extremely useful and allows for a lot of variations in routing in this game, which make it a lot of fun. So yeah, if you're not familiar with the genre of this game, it is a Metroidvania. That means that effectively the way the game is structured, we have several different abilities and a lot of different locations that are gated by various combinations of those abilities. Aeterna Noctis has quite a few abilities, and a lot of these abilities can be used either in conjunction with each other or or instead of one another as a substitution to reach new areas. So you'll see a lot of the time when you're playing this game, there's a lot of different paths you can use to get to the same point. And that opens up a lot of possibilities in routing, but usually there are gates that require, in fact, all of the abilities at the ends of each sort of section of this game. So we will need to pick up all the abilities for any percent, which is part of why it's so long, but you'll see a lot of fun variants on the abilities in this game. So yeah, it's a good time. You get to see a lot of this game in this run, and you get to, whoops, nope. That's how you change the difficulty, by the way. So you get to see a lot of parts of the game, and you get to see all of the major bosses. There are still a lot of optional areas that we don't see, but you do get a pretty good tour of the game. All right, so here we're meeting the map seller of the game. His name is Lord Drake, and we do not want to listen to him. He will talk to us and talk to us and talk to us, but we simply do not care. So luckily, we will not need to go through quite so much dialogue ever again in this run, but we will be talking to our friend, the map maker, quite a bit in later parts of the run. He sells a lot of useful items that we'll be using, not just maps. Yeah, casually he becomes your friend. A lot of what you can get from the map maker is pretty useful, including maps, obviously, for the area, but also maps of where secrets are, and most crucially, map markers. Oh, that was a very awkward time to pick up my first health potion. And also map markers, which you can use to mark the map. As you'll see throughout this run, this is a gigantic game, and it is very, very easy to start to get lost or to get confused as to where you're going. These maps are absolutely essential, and the maps that show you where the secrets are can basically guarantee you're able to get to 100% completion if that is the way that you'd like to play games. You'll notice there we use a bit of tech, which has been called a super jump in this community. And the way that it works is as you're landing from a jump, you can actually basically double tap the jump button to get a second jump in the air, just as you're leaving a platform. This allows for a few skips. The one I used there was a skip that actually skips a rather long cutscene. Oh wait. Which is one of the more annoying pieces of the early game. So it saves just a few seconds, but it's very nice. And we'll be using that tech quite a bit, especially in the early parts of the game. There is a double jump ability in this game, which we'll be picking up later. And once we get that ability, we'll be using it less, but it is extremely useful in a couple of places early on. All right, you may notice also we're going to go out of our way to pick up a lot of chests. This is for money to buy things from the shop later. This also makes up a good part of the early game of this game, because we need a couple of upgrades. In particular, there's one gem that we're going to pick up that gives us the ability to cool down our shield, which we'll pick up later much faster, and that is basically essential to the second half of the run. So we'll be picking that up. That costs quite a bit of money. That's what we need from the first part of this run, and we'll be picking more up as we go. Luckily, most of the upgrades are pretty easy to come across. All right, I do not trust this. The teleporting enemies can teleport basically right into your path. See, do you see? They're following me. And I'm going to show you guys one of the nicer strategies, we might call it, in the speedrun of this game. Dying has effectively no penalty if you can quickly get back to where you die. And each of these torches are checkpoints that respawn us. So one of the strategies in this game is to intentionally take a death if you know that that you will be... Sorry, I had to focus for just a second. If you know that you're going to be low on health and it would be painful to die later, it's faster and generally easier to get a free heal by just dying very quickly on one of those torches. And this is a strategy we're going to use probably a few times throughout this run. Luckily, each of these torches are really everywhere throughout the game. There's a lot of different places that we can use this tech, and well, tech is a strong word for intentionally dying, but it makes it really easy to basically take safety heals everywhere throughout the game. That is an unfortunate jump into the darkness there, but that's okay. So this is just a little bit of an auto-scroller section. We are waiting for these platforms, going through it. This is an example of the type of platforming that you have in Aeterna Noctis. This is a game really known for its challenging platforming and for its challenging boss fights. One of the main concerns with the original release of the game, which only featured the Noctis mode, which is the harder mode, was that it was extremely difficult, and the developers responded by creating the Aeterna mode, which I'm currently playing on, which, again, it doesn't make the game completely easy. This game is still quite difficult. However, it does make it a lot more manageable, and I would say it's a pretty good time. You'll notice throughout this area, there's a lot of enemies that are going to teleport to where I am. These can become real problems if you leave them alive, because they can teleport into you just before you go somewhere, just like that. And we want to avoid that if possible, so I'm going to be killing these just so that they don't come and bother me as I'm trying to do this platforming up here. That was something I don't think I've seen before. Our friend there was going through the floor. So one thing, you may have just noticed that I picked up a skill point there. That was a level up, so we got that skill point from experience levels. There are also skill points that just exist in the world, and we'll be picking several of those up too. You can actually get quite a lot of upgrades, and they increase our damage immensely. So we'll be doing that as the game goes on, and you'll see the payoff for some of the later bosses here. All right, yeah, so one thing you'll notice, I'm going to do a lot of quit outs. These quit outs are generally very quick, and they teleport us to generally the last lantern that we touched, but not always. Like we saw in the door inside the Temple of the Kings. If sometimes the lanterns aren't really checkpoints, and there are other times where there will be a checkpoint at another location. All right, so we have here our first boss. This is known as the Devourer. It is not a particularly hard boss, but it is a boss which is unfortunately quite a bit of RNG in terms of what attack pattern you get. So with this attack pattern, we can do enough damage to just fully kill the boss. But with the other attack that we just had, no such luck. So we had to simply wait. We're going to be damage tanking. Oops. It would help if I slashed in the correct direction. Damage taking just a little bit to be sure we deal enough damage to one cycle the boss, but the boss should be dead now. So not a particularly hard boss. We will be seeing them later. I got a little eager and moved to the right a little too soon. We will be seeing them again later, and they're going to be significantly worse the next time we see them. All right, so the early game, of course, a little bit fast-paced as we're picking up a lot of different abilities. What we just picked up was the Blood Gem, and this gives us the ability to store blood, which is a pretty useful mechanic. This works in multiple ways. So the fundamental use of it is to heal, and if we want to heal, we actually need to have a full meter of blood. That is the left meter on the UI there underneath my health. So that needs to be full if we want to heal, and it takes all of the blood that we have. That was the mechanic the game just taught us. There are also a handful of weapons that use some amount of blood. In particular, we're going to pick up one later, which is called Wild Strikes, which is a bit of an axe weapon. That weapon is going to be very useful to us. It deals kind of a lot of damage and works as basically a charge attack, but it takes about 1/3 of the meter of blood in order to do it. All right, so here I'm going to set up one of the first, not so much major. This is a, relatively important skip, but one that saves probably about a minute, something like that. We are going to pogo this lad 6 times to skip up here. And this is a very nice little skip here. We can go and pick up the key and quit out immediately. So we used to have to go inside this tower, but luckily we found a way to manipulate that particular enemy to skip up to get that key quickly without having to go on the inside. So yeah, this is just a very quick tour through the cemetery area. If you play this game casually, you'll probably spend a lot more time here than what we're zooming through, but actually all we do is all that's strictly speaking necessary for this area. Even casually, if you followed this, you would get through it quite quickly. We do have this little catacomb area that we have to go through, which is a bit involved. I'm going to spend skill points now just to quickly level up, and the main reason for that is the third upgrade I picked up there is actually the dash upgrade that I was alluding to earlier. So this allows me to dash faster. The dash itself isn't faster, but the cooldown for the dash is lower, meaning I can dash more frequently. This is very helpful for us as we go through areas. Obviously, it speeds up our overall movement, but it also helps us to not lose our minds quite so much if you're used to slightly faster dash cooldown. All right. These enemies can be a bit of an obnoxious pair, but they were nice enough to me there. The first nice enemies to me so far. This is the axe that I was alluding to earlier. So this is a pretty important pickup for us for multiple reasons. First of all, we get the axe, which, as I mentioned, is one of the abilities we will be using for damage for quite a lot of this game, actually. But also it unlocks the melee part of the skill tree. So you saw the skill tree for just a second earlier as I was upgrading. We'll be seeing it a lot more as we go through the game. That is our main way of getting upgrades in this game, and those use skill points that we can, again, pick up either through level ups or through pickups in the overworld. Here you'll see another minor skip. I'm going to use these bats and just skip up here real quick. This saves probably about 20-30 seconds, just a quick pogo skip. So there's a lot of relatively minor skips in this game. Unfortunately, because of the platforming requirements of the final areas, we don't currently know of any... Oh no, that's unfortunate. So that is a very unfortunate death. But luckily, the penalty for death is relatively minor in this game, as I mentioned earlier. You simply respawn at an old checkpoint. So luckily we can just go back there pretty quickly. All right. As we work our way back here, though, I was saying, unfortunately, we don't really know of any major abilities that we're able to skip in this game at the moment. But there's a lot of skips that we have found to get to those abilities faster and to make our lives a bit easier in terms of the order that we can get some of these abilities in. You'll see a lot of really cool tech, especially after we get through one of the upcoming areas, which is known as the Tower of Light. Once we get through there, you'll see probably the main piece of speed tech in this game, which is that we can actually store our dash momentum, and it makes traveling through long areas much, much more convenient. All right. But first, we're going to pick up a very, very important piece of equipment here, and that is the claw. This will allow us to jump up walls, and it's going to be one of the major pieces of movement in the game. Luckily, it is the second piece of movement that we get, so we don't have to spend too long without it. But this is the same story as before. You may notice we're back in the Temple of Kings. We're going to want to, once again, skip over this checkpoint at the very start of the room. You'll notice we're going into door 2 here. When I played this game casually, I thought, wow, all right, door number 1 had my dash, door number 2 had my claw, so every single one of these doors must be a major upgrade. Unfortunately, that is not exactly correct. Most of the doors don't have the major movement abilities. They have more minor upgrades. Now, some of these upgrades are very important upgrades, and one more of them is in fact required to beat the game, so we'll be seeing more of that soon. But the majority of those doors we're going to be skipping. We actually only go into 3 of them this entire run. Those doors are interesting. They present one of the major platforming challenges in the game. The later doors, especially on Noctis mode, are some of the more difficult platforming sections in this game. So it's definitely a bit of a shame that we missed some of those, but we do still see plenty of challenging platforming and especially boss fights in this 90% run. All right, so we've picked up this claw ability. This allows us to jump up walls, as I mentioned earlier. We are going to go out of our way really quick to go and pick up another one of these mirror fragments. And once we get that, I can quit out. Now, if I've skipped this checkpoint correctly, and I believe that I did, then we will be back in the throne room of the library, which I believe that we got it. Let's find out. Take a second to load back in. Yes. Okay, perfect. So we got the checkpoint skip. And we are able to warp out immediately. Otherwise, we'd have to go all the way back through the long hallway there. This gets a little bit less painful once we pick up the ability to store our dash momentum, but for now, it is nice to be able to skip through here. All right, so now we're going to work our way back toward where we came just for a second. We're going to make our way into the Tower of Light, as I mentioned before, and pick up our third major ability, which is going to be the light arrows. Arrows are going to be a very, very vital part of this game, but it may not be immediately apparent why once we pick up the light arrows. The light arrows are mostly just a damage source, although they do also open light gates, which there are a few of in the game. So we will be seeing a bit of them. But later on, we'll be picking up another type of arrow that's going to completely change our movement. So excited for that. But that's luckily a bit of the way into the run. So we get to enjoy ourselves with a bit of this this early movement still. All right, so here we're just going to head to the right, heading on into the light tower. Once we get there, I will be able to talk a little bit more about some of the mechanics in this game. You'll see that the Tower of Light is quite a different area from the ones we've been in. We did jump briefly down into the Ascension Cave, which is that crystallized area we just saw, to get a bit of a different feeling for the aesthetics of this game in the different areas. But the Tower of Light here is one of the more pleasing areas, personally, to my eye. And I think it's got really interesting platforming as well. All right, so here we are. That was one of my favorite areas of the game, by the way, that I just passed through in terms of single rooms. But yes, in this room, we are going to be working our way up. And here is the first of these new mechanics that I was discussing. These are teleporters, and they, as you might understand from the description of them and seeing a couple of them in action there, teleport us to its pair. Now, where that pair is, you may not immediately know about. So sometimes you can get a bit tricked in some of these teleporters, but they are pretty fun. And we'll see a little bit of abuse of some of these teleporters as we go through this. All right, I'm going to try for that. That is a very, very tight super jump. In order to get that, you need almost a frame-perfect second input. It is very hard to do, so I'm not too upset about missing it. It saves almost no time. Okay, so right there we just picked up something called a gem slot. So far we haven't really talked about gems at all. They are a bit like the badge system from Paper Mario or the charm system from Hollow Knight, if you're familiar with that. But effectively they are equipable upgrades, and what they do is all sorts of things, from raise your damage to make platforming easier to almost anything that you could imagine. We'll be picking up obviously a few of these charms these gems as we go through the game, and we'll be using mostly just 4 of them throughout the game. But the gem slot is an extra slot to place those gems in, as you might guess from the name. We are struggling ever so slightly with this platforming here. So we pick up a couple of these throughout the game, although not as many as you might guess. We actually only have 3 for the entire game, so we'll be having to ration ourselves a little bit in terms of which gems we're able to use. But actually, the final gem slot, the third one that we pick up, is one of the major reasons we're picking up money all throughout this game. It costs 50,000 gold, so we do need quite a bit of money to pick it up. Shoot. There we go. All right. Yes. So here I'm going to go out of my way a little bit, and this is to once again... Oh, unfortunate. This is to once again pick up some upgrades. So these are a bit out of the way. We're getting one more mirror fragment, and then I'm going to do the same on the other side, which will actually give me a health upgrade. Oop. Let's just pretend that worked. Okay, so we can come in here and pick up this health upgrade. I want to be a little bit careful. So the way that these rooms work is there is a center area that charges up and explodes. It is possible to get through these rooms, like as a general rule, before even a single explosion. However, because we're going out of our way for a couple of extra health upgrades, unfortunately, we have to wait out that explosion. All right, there's a couple of minor skips, some of which I've been going for and some of which I have not in each of these areas that save various amounts of time. Some of them as low as a couple of seconds, and others a bit more. But as a general rule, we're just climbing up these rooms and trying to make our way up to the top. Alrighty, there's quite a lot of these platforming rooms inside of the tower, and it'll cap off with a bit of a combination of platforming and boss fight that will be a good time. Alright, so here you'll see a little bit of the teleporter abuse that I was discussing earlier. That allows me to skip a little section by just going into that teleporter from a different angle. Alright, this enemy doing its best to kill me, and it will probably succeed. Okay, since we're on 1 health here, I think I'm going to take an intentional death once I can light a torch. Yeah, I don't think this one I have any death iframe skips for, so we'll just take a death here just to get this heal. As I mentioned, because deaths are like largely painless as long as you can get to where you died. It is actually optimal if you think you're going to die to take a heal via dying intentionally rather than to try to heal via the in-game methods of healing. Obviously, there are times where you really can't die or don't want to die because you're quite far from a torch. In those cases, you obviously would stop the heal. But if we can get to a torch right next to a hazard, you'll see this throughout the run. If I'm low on health, I'll often simply intentionally dunk and take the death. Alright, so we're almost through this last platforming. As I mentioned, this area is like actually one of my favorites, especially aesthetically, but I just really enjoy the mechanics of the teleporters and all the different things that are in play here in these rooms. And I think it's such a change of pace from the rooms that we were in the first couple of areas. It's just nice to see a completely different biome. And actually, this game does a fantastic job of constructing different biomes that really do feel unique and exciting. Even though it's an absolutely massive game, I never really felt like I was slogging through any piece of it. So if you're thinking about getting this game, I would definitely be able to recommend it if you're looking for a large game that you want to explore a bit. All right, so now we're starting this section of the run. This is the sword chase sequence. Once again, a platforming challenge. I did not mean to dash there. That was my mistake. So once again, a platforming challenge here. And it will cap off with a boss fight of the sword. So we have a few more of these rooms to go through that are quite like the rooms that came before. And once we are through them all, we will be in a boss fight. These rooms are pretty interesting. Once again, there's a lot of minor skips, especially ones that use the super jump tech. Like here, for example, this one's pretty tough. I'll try it one more time. Yeah, you need to get really high to get that one. So that one's a bit tough, but there's quite a bit of useful tech here. One thing I like about this game is like a lot of the harder tech, it really only saves a few seconds, and the run is long enough that you can skip a pretty large number of those without really worrying about it if you're just starting the run. So certainly when I started, I wasn't too worried about hitting a lot of these different tricks, but as my time gets better, I start to try to incorporate more of them. And this is a good example. Yeah, so you may notice me doing the buffered jumping in a few of these areas. I can call out some of them, like this one, for example, is especially... Oh no! Unfortunately, the respawn is rough if you miss it, or if you mess up later. Alright, you get to see it twice. Exciting. This is actually the very end of the chase sequence, though. That one saves quite a bit of time. It saves us warping all the way back around. This is a bit of a fun section where we don't need to touch the controller at all. All of the bouncy pads and the teleporters just take us where we need to go. All right, and we will now fight the second real boss of the run. This boss is pretty much just entirely an auto-scroller. So this boss has 3 different attacks that it can pull out to attack us with. I'm not sure that any of them are really any slower than the others, but this one is definitely the worst. It is the tornado attack, and the way it works is we have a effectively wind pulling us into the sword. So you notice me tapping the controller to get away from that the entire time, and it's very easy to take hits. The lightning strikes randomly. All right, and the very first hit on the sword we can get with a super jump like that. This attack is significantly easier. It lays down on the ground in one of 2 ways, and we can jump into the teleporters here to get away from it. We do have to get to the other side, but that's why these teleporters are hooked up to allow that easily. For the next 4 hits on the sword, the gems in the center mark its health. We have to climb these platforms. We can't get them from the bottom. So we'll be doing a bit of platforming in those phases. Here is the 3rd attack, so kindly demonstrated. Also quite easy to dodge. If you stand completely still, it will summon the sword directly on top of you. You can see the light beams under me roughly indicate where exactly that is. And all you have to do is dodge out of the way just before it hits. The attacks are random, so you see we got the same attack twice in a row here, but there is, I believe, some kind of waiting to try to make it so that we don't get 3 of the same attack in a fight, but I'm not entirely sure. At least it hasn't happened to me yet. Oh, that's so high, I can't even do it with the jump there. You may notice these red beads that appear on the ground. These are drops of blood, and we can pick them up to fill our blood gauge that I talked about a little bit earlier. You may notice it's full. That means I can heal with it if I want to. However, I'm actually not going to, because I want to come out of this fight with a significant amount of blood. And the reason is I'll be using it to do blood-based attacks in the next section. So we won't be picking up this blood. That was the sword fight. We just finished it. Not too bad of a fight. But yeah, the second real boss, and definitely a bit of a slow one. All right, and we can go ahead and skip this cutscene. As I mentioned before, all cutscenes are skippable in this game, which is really wonderful. If we're timing IGT, the cutscenes actually don't contribute to the in-game time either, which is another benefit. If you want to actually sit and watch the cutscene, you're free to. But you don't have to. You can skip, well, I say all, actually almost all. There are a couple of cutscenes which you're unable to skip. All right, and now we're going to use an ability I haven't really talked about. This is a dimensional vial. What this does is it returns us to our last throne. So instead of taking us to the last checkpoint like a save and quit does, it takes us to the last throne that we've seen. And this can allow us to skip back to where we took our bench earlier. So we'll once again see just a tiny bit of the Ascension Cave, and also the first use of the sliding tech that I alluded to earlier. We're going to see a lot more of this, but the way that it works now that we have our arrows is we can basically hold the arrow button and a button that makes us stop moving while we're aiming, which is on my controller the Y and the B button, and pause while we're holding both of those. What that does is it makes the game never update your horizontal momentum from whatever it is. So that means that when we dash, it actually stores our dash speed, so we can either dash and then use this tech, or we can use it first and then dash. And either way, it causes us to basically slide along the ground at the dash speed. There are some issues. We can't just use it basically everywhere, and mostly it's because we actually can't update our horizontal velocity ourselves either. So I can't really control where I'm going with it. I can only travel in a straight line, as long as I'm using it. Alright, so this is what I mean by using this charge attack. Anytime you see me with basically a dark aura around the character, that is when I'm charging an attack like this, and you can see it deals quite a lot of damage. Those enemies usually take either 3 or 4 hits to kill, and we can kill them with either a single charge if we're lucky and get a high roll, or a charge and a single hit if we are not. So we'll be using it quite a bit throughout the game. Once we get a bit deeper into this run, we will be at a place where we don't necessarily want to use our charge attack as much because we can actually get extra hits of damage for regular attacks, but that'll be quite a ways away, so you'll see me utilizing this attack pretty much the entire time. Alright, so the way that this area works, we're in yet another quite visually distinct area, and this is part of what I mean by just very believable biomes that keep us from getting too bored with the game. This one is pretty interesting. It's called the Forge, and as you can see, it's mostly fire-based in terms of visual design. This is the area where we're going to pick up our double jump, but we have to clear out 3 sub-areas here, and we're going to, once again, be picking up a couple of upgrades as we go through. These are mostly for later, but once we get through these sub-areas, each of which ends with a mini arena, we will be able to continue on to the boss. And each of these has a bit of platforming, of course, and once again, it has an arena at the end that we will need to fight our way through. Luckily, there is a heal right before each of the arenas, so that's what these do. When I press them, it gives me a full heal, and I am able to come into these arenas at full health. There's also a lantern right outside, so even if we do struggle, luckily we can retry with basically no hassle. These arenas, once again, are going to be a place where I'm going to use a lot of these charge attacks. If I'm good, I can get both enemies with a single charge attack like that. That was basically perfect. So we're going to be aiming to do that. Alright, so that was the first arena. Not too bad. Now we continue on to the second and third areas, so we'll see. Yeah, each of these sub-areas has their own unique challenges to them. I would say that the third area is probably the hardest of them, at least in the order that I do. But the way these are structured is effectively wings of the forge, and when we use this elevator, it brings us back to the center. Alright, now I mentioned very early when we met our lovely map maker that we would be seeing him many a time. This will be actually the first time that we're going to buy something from him. And what we're going to buy is actually another one of these dimensional vial recharges. That was the ability that let me teleport all the way back to my last throne. We're going to be getting another one of those because we are going to be teleporting back from a throne quite a bit later. And actually he's a bit of a scoundrel. He charges more for the same item depending on where you meet him in the game. So it's cheaper for us to buy early, even though it's the same item, than it is to buy late. He knows not even the world of Aeterna Noctis is free from the effects of inflation, unfortunately. Alright, this little puzzle here can be a little bit frustrating. The way it works is we have to hit effectively 5 consecutive switches. One of them is a light switch, which was here. And the others are melee switches. If you mess up and dunk in a hazard or anything like that, you have to start the whole thing over, so all 5 of them need to be switched again, which is a bit of a pain, but it's not too bad. All right, so we'll continue through here. You'll see a lot of the same enemy appearing throughout the forge, but the platforming, as I mentioned, does get a bit different depending on which part of the forge we're on. This is one area that has quite a lot of differences between the Aeterna and the Noctis modes. Aeterna mode has a number of areas where instead of the platforming challenges that are there in Noctis mode, it's been replaced with just an enemy, and right there is one example. It's definitely convenient for us here on Aeterna mode that we don't have to deal with those, because I can just zoom all the way through it and not have to worry. Alright, I'm stopping to kill some of these enemies. Some of them just because they are in the way, and others because I want a little bit more experience before we fight the boss of this area. And that is to get a very particular upgrade that we'll be using for the fight. So I want just a bit of experience. So you may see me stopping to kill a few extra enemies. Alright. Okay. So this is the second of the arenas, pretty much the same as the first. There aren't too many variants of these arena fights. Got just a little bit slow. We just have to be careful not to take too much damage. If we've timed things correctly, we can actually get a level up in the middle of the arena, which would be ideal for us because it means that we get a full heal halfway through the arena, and that is exactly what we've done there. Beautiful. Yes, you may notice me using my charge shot basically at the start of each of these. The goal here, of course, is to try to kill them as quickly as possible, and those, once again, almost entirely kill the enemies as soon as they spawn in. Okay, I'm going to take a second now to actually spend some of these skill points we picked up. We need exactly one more level before we get the ability that I need for the Phoenix. But the way that we're going to allocate our skill points is basically just entirely going up the melee tree, which is the right side of the skill tree. There are a number of different viable combat builds for this game. The Noctis mode world record actually uses an arrow-based combat build. But for Aeterna mode, you'll see the power of the melee build as we get to some of these final bosses. It makes the final boss fights very, very quick. Effectively, we can more than triple our damage, and it is definitely... it makes the end of the game quite fun. You'll see. I just tried to use a double jump, but we're not quite there yet. Alright, so once again, this is the third wing of the forge. Pretty much the same story. I think this is the hardest wing. It definitely has the most difficult sub areas, or particularly room. This shot in particular drives me insane, by the way. It is unreasonably difficult. Okay, so this happens sometimes. I think I have to wait now. Well, we'll head over to the other one and do that. So sometimes as you jump through these teleporters, you don't keep your momentum, and you end up just dunking. Unfortunately, that effectively causes you to wait for another cycle as the switch refreshes, but it's nothing crazy. Alright, so we can get a few of these kills. Once again, I'm mostly just doing this to try to get enough skill points to have a particular ability by the time I fight the Phoenix, which is the boss of this area. There's another couple of rooms in here, so maybe I don't need to go all the way out of my way to get some of these kills, but just to be safe, we want to take a few. That key I picked up is the key to the fourth door in the Temple of Kings, which astute observers may realize that the last door I went into was door 2, not door 3. So actually we're skipping door 3 entirely. That is an upgrade that we simply don't need. Oops. I'll take an intentional death here, just to get my get a free heal. This is probably my least favorite conveyor belt in the game. Oh no, oh, that would have been annoying. Okay. This room in particular is one of the harder rooms, honestly, in all of the Forge. There's a lot of tricks, a lot of difficult platforming that remains largely unchanged from Noctis mode, actually, and just generally tough time. It's also quite large, of course. This room is huge, as you may have noticed. Okay, we'll climb up here, and we are near the top, finally. Okay, beautiful. But yeah, we'll be hopefully able to pick up that skill, that last skill point in the final arena. As I mentioned, if we time things correctly, then during the arena is the perfect time to get your skill point. So hopefully we'll have that happen to us. If we don't, we may kill something on the way up to the boss. All right, I don't need that heal there, so we can just slide all the way into the arena. This arena is probably the hardest of the three, which is one more reason that I do this third. But it is still not too terribly difficult. As long as we use our charge shot correctly and avoid flaming piles of magma on the ground, like I have forgotten to do, we'll be fine. Oops. Okay. Yeah, one other thing, I actually don't think I've talked much about the health potions in this game. There are health potions that we pick up, and the way that they work is they work as random drops from enemies, so we want to be a bit careful about when we use them, but you can only hold one at a time. Oops, that's a bit far from that enemy. This is the final wave, so we're fine. You can only hold one at a time, and beautiful, we got our skill point just in time. So I don't want to use them too early, but they are there as basically an emergency use if we need to, which is nice. They are an instant heal, and again, I can only hold one, so I really want to save it, especially for bosses where we don't usually get a chance to get another heal. We try to save it for when we need it, but there will be times where I will go ahead and use this potion. Since it's a random drop from enemies, we'll often get lucky and pick it up somewhere after, just after bosses in normal platforming sections. As you've seen, we kill quite a lot of the enemies that get in our way, so usually we can pick one up. They also do spawn inside of chests, so there are a few times where, since we're going out of our way for chests anyway, we'll pick up the health potions that fall in the chests. I'm going to sit on this throne for a couple of reasons here. The number one reason is that I need to equip this gem. This is our first gem that we're going to equip. It is a gem that increases our crit chance. It's not a huge bonus, but we actually pick it up for free the first time we talk to our map maker friend. So we have it in our inventory, and damage is damage, so we take it. Alright, this is a slide, but I was taking a sip of water, so we'll be dashing instead. Okay, so we're coming into this fight with a little bit of blood. That's not ideal. We want kind of a full bar of blood, ideally, but the Phoenix patterns are pretty random. There's one attack in particular that we're looking for, and it is an attack that comes at the very center of the screen. This is not it. This attack, however, is not too bad in the position that we're in, because these feathers, which you can actually hit, give us blood. So this is the attack that we're looking for. The idea... Ah, shoot. That's unfortunate. The idea is to get a heavy strike on the Phoenix using our charged attack while in that phase, and if we get two of them off, it actually immediately phases the Phoenix. Unfortunately, we only got one and missed our second, so we weren't able to quite kill the Phoenix in just that attack, but mostly it's okay. After each phase of the Phoenix, we actually go through one of these phases, which is a bit of a platforming phase once again. The Phoenix, as you may notice, is attacking us from the sides of the screen, and we are climbing our way back up to a platform. There's 3 of these phases overall. The Phoenix is a relatively difficult boss when you're playing this game casually, and these phases get harder as you go on because the platform that we're fighting on actually gets smaller over time. So this attack here we can largely jump over and pogo and just do a bit of damage. That attack actually can be punished with another ability that we unfortunately do not have because of the way that this route accesses the forge. Oh no, I was 1 hit away, I think, from phasing the Phoenix again. That's okay. Yep, 1 hit away. So you can actually tell by the color of the numbers that you're dealing on the damage exactly how much health an enemy has. In the first third of health, the numbers of the damage you're dealing are going to be white. In the second third of health, they will be yellow, and in the final third, they will be red. Because the Phoenix has 3 phases with equal values of health, you can actually just use these colors as a one-to-one mapping between the phases. I will go ahead and use our health potion here, and the reason for that is I do not want to die to the Phoenix. Okay. Okay, so we got a center attack. Shoot. Okay, this should be enough to kill the Phoenix. We do have to wait for this attack to end. Yes, good. Okay, beautiful. So yeah, that's the Phoenix fight. Got lucky in the third phase there with that middle attack. So yeah, can't be too upset with that. The Phoenix is a pretty consistent fight once you get used to it as far as surviving. However, it is a bit random in terms of when you get lucky with that middle attack that allows you to deal all the damage. So a bit of both worlds here. But yes, now we pick up our double jump ability, and this ability is going to be a pretty big help to us. But the first thing we're going to do with it is, instead of going through this little tutorial about how to use it, we are going to quit out of the game. This will bring us back to the throne that we sat on earlier, so it's just a very quick exit out of there. And we are actually going to take another little detour now to use that final key that we picked up. So what this is going to do is give us an extra arrow, and that may not sound like a big deal, but as the game progresses and we pick up another type of arrow, that's actually a pretty massive upgrade. But first we get one little cutscene here.
Time is the canvas, and my hand is the brush.
So this arrow is actually necessary to complete the game with any percent, and the main reason is that we are going to pick up another type of arrow that is going to allow us to actually teleport. Oh, we had the nice animation there. I messed it up by dashing again. Unfortunate. And as it turns out, these teleporting arrows actually are required to use 2 in quick succession in a number of platforming sections of the game, even for any percent. All right, and luckily, once again, I remembered to skip this checkpoint. As I mentioned with the other checkpoints throughout the game, if you hit that checkpoint, then you are in a bit of trouble because you will need to walk back out. Now that we have the ability to slide, it's less essential, but it does still make a pretty big difference. All right, here we're going to use the double jump tech. Actually, when we have double jump, the super jump tech, when we have double jump, the super jumps actually, oh no. The super jumps actually don't require that we're landing. We can do it even when grounded, but they still otherwise are pretty much the same. All right, so you may notice a lot of these light switches that we're hitting. The way that those work is pretty much just pausing the platforms. We skipped a couple of them with some of the slide tech, but overall this is pretty much the way that these the area was intended. All right, so now we quit back out. Once again, because I did the checkpoint skip, we'll come right back to the library, and this will allow us to warp immediately instead of having to walk down the hall. All right, back we go. So this part of the game starts to get really fun, and this is where I think the game really starts to take off. It's where we have the double jump ability and also have the ability to store our dash momentum. And you got a taste of why in the room that we just went through. In that room, you know, you saw using the double jump and using the slide tech to simply move through areas very smoothly. I think this is sort of the most fun part of the game. When you have double jump, you can recover pretty well to compensate for the fact that you don't have the ability to change your horizontal momentum, because you can change your vertical momentum. You may have noticed, but the way to get out of the slide storage is shooting an arrow. So we'll be using this quite a bit throughout the game. Sorry, I just had to focus for just 1 second. Unfortunately missed a 5-second cutoff there. We almost made it. And we're going to use it immediately here. This is a bit of a skip to get to a skill point that we are not supposed to be able to access yet. There are actually a couple of ways to get here, but this is by far the most fun. So we just wanted to go pick up that skill point really quickly. All right, there's quite a lot of things that we're going to pick up in this area, but we get to actually get a pretty decent tour of this crystal area. And I hope that those of you who haven't seen this game before are able to enjoy, again, all the different art styles that go into the various areas of this game. That was a bit of an unfortunate dunk in the spikes there. As I've been talking about how pretty it is, we get to see it one more time. Fancy that. So I really like how different each of the areas in this game feels. I don't feel like I'm slogging through the same area again and again. The art style is unique. The enemies are unique. The number of different enemy types in this game is wild. And I really appreciate all the work that went into this game. All right, we're going to stop here and pick up this chest. Once again, we need money for a number of early things. And we're going to be picking up quite a lot of it as we go on here. And, you know, as if on cue, I'm going to actually be picking up more if this lad will get out of my way. We're going to... Oh, I thought I saw a health potion, but I didn't. Tragic. We're going to pick up another chest, which actually requires that I shoot 3 targets. Unfortunately, my ability to aim down has been apparently taken from me. Oh no. So once again, if you take a hazard hit, you actually basically have to wait for the respawn of the trigger, which is a bit unfortunate, but okay, this is better. So we have to hit 3 switches here in relatively quick succession, but when we do, it opens this gate. This gate has 5,000 gold in it, which is more than several of the previous chests we've gotten put together. You can see we only have 14,000 total. So that chest, even though it takes a bit of a time, is very much worth it. All right, in this room, we are going to be simply climbing up for a bit. And the reason is, once again, we're going to pick up some more of these mirror fragments. We are actually nearing the end of our mirror fragment collection, and as I mentioned, it is going to pay off in spades later. Okay. Once again, a very quick save and quit brings us back down to the bottom of the room. Just saves a tiny bit of time. And once again, we're going to pick up another one of these chests. So these next couple of areas have probably the highest both chest density and and mirror fragment density of the remainder of the game. So we'll be going out of our way a little bit to pick up some of these chests and some of these mirror fragments, but it will pay off for us in a little bit here. All right. So we're coming up on this boss here. This is Wormarok, another bit of an auto-scroller, but a pretty difficult one, at least casually. With the double jump ability, I would say that this is not as hard of a fight as many people's casual playthrough may be, but the idea, you can essentially see it here. We jump over the spinning blade here, which is the boss, and when we do it the third time, it actually comes fully out of the ground and we can hit it in the eye. We need to do this 5 times in order to kill it. And in between, when it is damaged, we have to deal with some of these enemies that come down inside of these egg sacs. We can hit them out of the air to make our lives a little bit better, but once they're down, we have to actually get them out of the ground, much like their lovely friend, this boss here, and make sure that we kill them. They can get a bit out of hand if we aren't careful. Shoot. I missed my charge shot there. A bit unfortunate. Oh, wow. Lucky with the spawns, though. Of the health potions. I say unable to pick up the health potion. Okay, perfect. Yeah, you can see why double jump is nice for this fight. Especially in the ability to hit the eye, double jump is very, very helpful. When you're playing this game casually, it is possible to get here before you pick up double jump, and that makes this fight a lot harder, because you either have to aim your arrows well, or actually pogo up the side of the boss, which is pretty difficult, I must say. Okay, so that's the boss, though. I will go ahead and heal here. And the reason is we're actually going to carry our health for a little bit. So yeah, that boss, once again, a bit of an auto-scroller. All you have to do is make sure you're cleaning up the ads as you're fighting. And then I need to make sure I actually pick up the ability that we came here for. And then if you do that, you are pretty much set as long as you can hit the eye during the other phase. Okay. The ability we just picked up is another major ability. It is the shield ability. Hi, I forgot that I don't have blood because I healed. We're doing great. Okay. This room is the bane of my existence and probably one of the worst rooms in the game. And I say that simply because I'm trying to go fast. Okay. So the shield ability, which is what we just picked up, is an extraordinarily useful ability. It allows us to use a shield, as, big surprise there, I suppose. It allows us to use a shield, which will give us invincibility frames from any kind of damage from bosses. It does not protect us from hazards, unfortunately. But enemies, bosses, all of that, we are completely safe from, as long as we have the shield active. And, okay, we're doing great. And we will be using it quite a bit throughout this run. I could have used it in a couple of places there, but we had iframes anyway because of the lovely speedrun tech called slamming your face into an enemy that you didn't realize was there. Okay, we are going to work our way down this room here. This is probably the most out-of-the-way health pickup that we get in the run currently. It's possible that we reroute this particular health upgrade and get one somewhere else, but this is a nice little safety just to have the extra health here. All right, and we work our way back down this room. So again, this is one of the more upgrade-dense areas in that there's a lot of different upgrades that we need to pick up here. I went up the wrong thing. Perfect. But once we get out of this, we'll be able to start finally collecting on some of these upgrades. So it's an exciting time. But yeah, you'll see me using the shield quite a bit as we especially go through some of the subsequent sections of this game. When we have the shield as it is, which is the dark shield, it isn't as helpful as we would like. So the shield actually has a gem that's associated with it, which is called the Oxenite Crystal. And this gem is probably one of the nicest gems that we can get. Now, we'll pick this up after we kill the next major boss, because actually the shop won't sell it until after we kill this boss. So we won't have it yet, but we'll get it pretty soon. This is a fun bit of tech here. You can actually pause while dashing at a wall, specifically while on a conveyor belt. And it will allow you to clip through the wall. We haven't found any other place where we can clip through the wall in a useful way, unfortunately, but hopefully we'll be able to find more of this tech. There are some cases where dashing and pausing can also be useful, which I'll be discussing a little bit later, but that's just a little clip. Actually, because it's an auto-scroller, it technically doesn't save time, but what it does do is lets you skip an entire platforming challenge. So, you know, we like that. We'll make our lives easy when we can. All right, so with double jump, you can skip some of the actual auto-scroller bits, but not very much of it. Okay, and we are almost through this area and into the next area, which is called the Cradle of Light, which once again will be a fairly different experience from the area that we've been in, with new enemies and new aesthetics. And once again, I really appreciate the work that went into this game in terms of creating all of these distinct areas and make them all feel fresh. Okay, so we're gonna head down there. There's we do only have 2 health here. It might be good to heal, but I think I'll just take an intentional death pretty soon, and that will be my way of healing. Okay, so the thing that we just went out of our way to pick up, for those of you paying attention, was actually the first gem that we picked up that wasn't just literally handed to us. So that is the Leech gem. This is one of the best gems in the game. What it does is it gives you a little bit of blood over time for free. So you can see how that would be useful. Basically just a constant source of extra blood. All right, I'm gonna die here, I think, as just a quick heal. That's right. Okay, and I'm going to be trying to use, coming up in this next section, I'm going to be trying to use the dash tech that I was alluding to a second ago, which is to pause the game as I'm dashing. This allows us to clip through some hitboxes, and I'm going to see if I can get it. I did not get it there. Okay, so you can actually skip that checkpoint if you're lucky, or if you do it perfectly. Unfortunately, I missed it, which means we have to walk back here. But it's not too much time loss. It's just a minor one. You also notice I have started using the shield a little bit more. Especially the shield is useful when you're sliding around, and the reason for that is that, once again, you don't have any way of like reversing your horizontal momentum or anything like that. So it's better to use the shield and to continue sliding if you can, rather than trying to rather than going out of your way to stop your motion, basically. You'll excuse me for a second as I pick up some of these upgrades. These are some of the faster mirror fragments in the run, and they are very convenient. They're all on the way over to the next area. Now, this here, we can get like this, I promise. There we go. Sometimes it can take a couple tries because you need quite a high super jump there to get it. This is honestly one of my favorite parts of the game. I love this movement here, because it really feels smooth once you're picking up everything on the way over. I meant to skip that checkpoint. I'm very, very smart. That's fine. Once again, that's the tiniest of time saves. There is another checkpoint which I'm going to attempt to skip in a second, but once again, it only saves a little bit of time. This shot is physically impossible, as anyone who has played this game can tell you. Alright, so we're gonna sneak our way down through here, and once again, nice. Okay, so we got that skip. That means I can just quit out here, and we should be back at the torch at the beginning. If we don't get that checkpoint skip, then we actually need to go through the second half of that room, but luckily it's not too bad. All you have to do is basically one long sideways section down below. Probably maybe 10 to 15 seconds of time loss if we miss it. All right, and here once again I'm going to use another super jump. This one's a bit more lenient. You can basically get any kind of super jump and skip up to this. This once again actually saves quite a bit of time. It saves us having to go through that entire lower section, which is nice. And now we're going to use, once again, our dimensional vial. So this is why we purchased it a million years ago from our lovely map-selling friend. I am going to take this opportunity to put on the leech gem, which I picked up. So we're going to also get critical cut and increase our critical damage. What those do is actually give us extra hits if we get a crit. And this will start to become very useful as we increase our crit chance. We get additional hits, we get additional damage. And it's very, very convenient. All right, so coming down here, we're going to come up on the boss fight of this area. We want to skip every checkpoint on the way there because I want to quit out after the boss all the way back to the throne. All right, and we are heading on down. So this robot boss is kind of a real wall casualty, honestly. This is one of the more difficult early game bosses, and I would say it's still a pretty hard fight in the speed run. Because this is right before we get our upgraded shield and some of our damage upgrades. So this fight is definitely tough. Luckily, even if we skip the checkpoints, it's okay. We don't have to respawn from the bench. We'll actually respawn here anyway. Friend-shaped robot is what this lad is. So yeah, this fight is kind of tough. He has really only 4 attacks, but the 4 attacks are pretty hard, especially in the second phase. This one is luckily pretty easy. This one is very random in my experience. It's hard to predict what's happening here. And this one is our real chance to get in damage. Oh, we're getting very lucky here. Alright, and there we can use our shield for a bit of extra time. We can use a charge attack. Alright, so the second phase is starting. What this does is it's really just the same phase. However, there is now a ricocheting projectile, which you can see. Oh, I jumped a bit late there, I guess. Which you can see, and it can cause problems for us. Alright, good, we got another of these attacks. We'll use our shield to keep dealing a bit of damage, and we have to get away. Okay, I think we've done enough. I think the boss is dead. We'll find out. Oh, I guess not. Sometimes the boss is still dead when this attack goes off, but... yeah, no, we just didn't quite deal enough, I guess. That's unfortunate. Okay, well, the boss will be shortly dead, luckily. Yeah, there we go. Okay, you can tell the boss is dead by if the projectile that it was shooting around actually despawns. So we must have been a few hits away, but not a big deal. Okay, so that was the robot fight. Now we have to actually skip the same checkpoint on the way out that we skipped on the way in. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. That is the harder of the skips, actually, because we can't quite see. Actually, I guess I didn't really talk too much about this checkpoint, but hey, we got it. Okay. This one is actually an invisible checkpoint, but if you are jumping right at the height of the wall, you're able to skip it. All right, so we need to go pick one thing up before we can quit out, and that is a TAL railway system ticket, which is sitting on the ground here. All right, and now we have it. This will allow us to use a train later in the game. Okay, but for now, we are going to go ahead and quit on out. This should bring us all the way back to the throne if we did it correctly, and we did. Beautiful. Okay, cool. All right, so now for a change of pace. We've done everything in the right side of the map, and we are now going to work our way over to the left side of the map. That is really the second half of the game, is over here on the left side of the map. I didn't actually aim my arrow. Beautiful. And it is the side that really starts to get difficult in terms of the bosses, the enemies, and the platforming. So if you thought any of this was hard, not what I want to do. I'm sorry, sir. I want to buy the skill point, and I want to buy the oxenite crystal. Okay, beautiful. So that was the gem that I was talking about earlier. We won't equip it yet, but we'll equip it soon. Okay. The second half of the game, though, this really starts to get difficult, which is why we've been picking up all of these additional upgrades. So you will see as we go, hopefully, that we will have quite a lot of damage. And as you can see, the movement here gets really, really fun. This movement is pretty difficult, especially when you're sliding around. No, I don't want to go here. I always think I do. Especially when you're sliding around, this gets very fun, but very hard. And it's very easy to just make mistakes when you're sliding. Especially because... there we go. Especially because... oh, actually that works. For some reason I couldn't double jump. But yes, in this section of the game, we don't have the oxenite crystal equipped yet, so our shield is unfortunately still a long cooldown shield. So until we fix that, it'll be especially hard to do some of this platforming or some of this sliding, but it will be just as fun, I promise you. All right, so we're going to pick up the last of our mirror fragments that we need for this run. One will be down here. That's right there. And the other is going to be in about 2 rooms. Ah. Okay. Once again, we're faced with some of these teleporting enemies. They can really ruin our day. So we want to hopefully not deal with them too much. I'm going to intentionally die here just to get the heal. The teleporting enemies are often worth it to kill just to not have to deal with them. Okay, so now once again, because we're sliding everywhere, especially, any stopping to kill enemies is quite slow. I pressed the wrong button, that's fine. So we want to be a little bit careful about what we're doing here. Okay, this is our last mirror fragment. We're picking this one up, and then we will be able to actually collect what we've been working toward, which is another gem, which is going to massively increase our damage. So this gem that I'm about to pick up is really the crux of the melee route, which I've put together. No. Okay. So we do really, really need it. We're going to go pick it up right now. And this does take a little bit of a detour, but I promise you, friends, it is worth it. What this gem will do is actually give us an additional attack for every slash, and that attack is going to deal the base damage effectively. So it is extremely, extremely useful. So it doesn't quite double our damage because there are other attack or bonuses that we're getting from the rest of our skill points and other gems, for example. But it comes close to doubling our damage. And actually, as we get more skill points, we're going to make that even stronger. Now, first, I picked this up, but I actually need to go and upgrade it. So the way that that's going to work is I need to come back to the forge. I need to talk to some friends. So you'll see we picked up this gem. It is currently what is called powerless, meaning I am not able to equip it. We're coming back to the forge to talk to the forge master here and complete a very short quest, which is going to allow us to equip that gem. So this is a bit of a detour, but as I mentioned, we get such a huge damage bonus that not only does it make the boss fights faster, but it also, of course, makes them safer, since we will not be... Oh, that's unfortunate. Just missed it. We will try once more. Okay, we're coming up here for just a chest. Beautiful. But yes, these strats are both safety strats and speed strats. So it makes the final fights a lot more fun, and hopefully you all will be able to see that shortly. Okay, so we need to talk to our lovely friend here. This is the daughter of the blacksmith, actually, and the blacksmith has asked that we tell her that he is dead. It is actually quite a sad story, but one that, of course, we don't have time to read here during this speedrun. So we're just going to head down here, talk to the blacksmith, and we will go ahead and get our upgrade. All right, here we go. Okay, beautiful. So once we have this upgrade, we're going to switch out our gems, and then we will continue on to the left half of the game. So here we go. We can go ahead and quit out to get to the top of this room, and we're going to go back to the throne. So yeah, this was just a little short detour to pick up this item. Again, one of the most powerful in the game. There is another one, but unfortunately, it requires effectively every single collectible mirror piece in the game. So surprise, surprise, we will not be picking that up in an any percent run. But for our purposes, we have what we need. I also want to get one more skill point before we fight the next boss. So hopefully we'll be able to get that. Okay, so we teleport back. We still have a bit more platforming to do in the left half of this area, but now we actually have the Oxenite crystal equipped, as well as our additional gem that we just picked up. So what this Oxenite crystal does, so you notice just how quickly that enemy died compared to earlier. What the Oxenite crystal does is it allows us to, oh, I don't have an arrow to actually do the storage, it's fine. It allows us to use our shield at the perfect time, and if we time it correctly, then we get our shield back immediately. If we time it poorly, though, then actually we lose our shield for the regular amount of time, which feels like about an eternity if you're used to the fast recharge. So we'll be dealing with that in a little bit. But for now, we are really able to recharge our shield pretty much constantly. It allows us to slide through a lot more enemies and just saves a ton of time and stress compared to the regular shield. Okay, here's another throne that I am going to sit on, actually, which will despawn the enemies. Okay, well, not today. This enemy, oh my god. Okay, you've earned it. You've earned it, sir. You've earned it. I will kill you. Always a good time. We didn't need that throne, but I was picking it up to despawn the enemy so that they wouldn't bother me, but that's fine. Okay, so we're entering now the west wall. This, if you have been paying close attention from the beginning of the run, you might recognize the look of this area. It is actually quite similar. Oh, unfortunate that I got that cutscene. That's okay. It is quite similar to one of the first areas that we were in, actually, the East Wall. And the naming may convince you that, in fact, these are related areas. This actually is effectively the counterpart to that first area. As I mentioned earlier, we finished off the right side of the map, and now we are on to the left side. Well, the left side has quite a similar layout, except it's a significantly more difficult area than the east wall that we were in at the very beginning of the game. However, if you remember the boss from that first area, the Devourer, boss with a bunch of eyes that had pretty unfortunate patterns, we are actually going to face that boss again, only this time it will be significantly more difficult. So that boss is the Devourer, or sometimes called Dev2 by the speedrun community, as it's the second time we fight the Devourer. It is probably one of the more difficult bosses casually. Ideally, because once again we've picked up several upgrades, we are going to be hopefully just rolling through that boss, but we will see. You can see just how fun this slide tech is, by the way. It's just a great time to be able to slide and shoot an arrow to end your slide momentum. All right. As I mentioned, I do want to get another skill point in this area if I can, so I might go out of my way to kill a couple more enemies, because I think I'm a little bit low compared to where I want to be. I'll probably just kill the ones that teleport, because they are the real pains. Well, conveniently, this one offered their services to me. Okay, so pretty much like any of the areas in this game, there are a number of platforming challenges that we need to go through. We're actually picking up a set of 6 different keys in this area, though. And those keys are going to be used to open the gate to the final, or to the boss of this area. Oh boy. We'll go ahead and use our potion. So we've picked up almost all of them so far. Alright, I think we're going to go ahead and kill this one too. Alright, and 2 health here is not ideal, but we're going to take some time to kill the enemies anyway, so I think it'll be okay. This is an area where we want to do a lot of checkpoint skips, so unfortunately I can't really stop midway through to take an intentional death. I need to get through this area without deaths. Okay, we've shot our arrow there. Fun fact, when I first played this game, I did not know that that you could just like shoot that arrow and it would persist. So instead, I went through that area with multiple different arrows that I shot as I went through. And let me tell you, if you're playing this game casually, don't do that. That's my advice to you. Oh no. Okay, I'm killing a couple of enemies just because, like, I want the extra skill point, as I mentioned before. Okay, we're going to kill just a couple more enemies, and then we will get a 25% damage skill point, which is very, very nice. Okay. Oop. Okay, I want this, but also I want to die so that I can just have a full heal here. Beautiful. Yeah, so you can see here, this is where it really starts. 99.69. Unfortunate. Okay, that'll be enough. This is where it really starts to be more efficient to just do regular attacks instead of dealing the charged attack. And the reason is we get that extra slice of damage with the regular attack that we don't get with the charge attack. Okay, here we go. So this is the next boss. This is Devourer 2, which is really a refight of that boss with many eyes. That was the first boss in the game. We will be hopefully getting some good patterns here. This boss has all the same attacks as the first boss, but they don't necessarily happen to the same level of difficulty. We'll take a damage tank here to keep dealing damage. Okay, so this attack here will mean the kill, I think. Because we were already quite close to the kill. Unfortunately, it's a rather long attack. Okay, I think we've gotten the kill. Yes, good. Okay, perfect. That was a pretty good fight. We can be happy with that. So we got one of the good patterns, which is Devourer 2 going to the wall. If we didn't get our damage bonus, we probably would have needed to deal with extra attacks. So you can start to see how all of those extra attacks really start to add up. And this is where those bonuses are really, really helpful. Okay, so now we can leave, and actually this effectively unlocks our access to the left side of the map. So this is a pretty important fight, and effectively marks the halfway point of the run, actually. So it's kind of split nicely. We did all the things on the right side, and this was sort of our left side access. And now that it's done, we can go to the left side and go to some of the truly insane areas in this game. Let me tell you, if you want unique platforming, this game really has it, and we're going to start to see that pretty soon. So we have a couple of areas to get through that are maybe a little more conventional. Again, I do want to just, as always, say the art style is just absolutely gorgeous. And this area is one of the prettiest. This is called the Infinite Sea, and you can just look in the background. I would like to point out the flying sky whales, one of my favorite parts of this game. But just this entire area is just absolutely gorgeous. And this is actually the tracks of the train that we're going to be taking. So I picked up that train ticket just after the robot boss, for those of you who remember. This is how we are going to be using that. So this train actually takes us to a number of areas. The first place we're going to go is the other side of the Infinite Sea. This really takes us to the left half, and access to this train station is very important because it also takes us to the undersea fortress, which we'll be going to later. But yeah, a number of cool areas to come. The one that we're going to next is actually called the End of the World, which is just, of course, a fantastic name for an area. So that's always exciting. We will see. You'll be able to see some of these upcoming areas. We're actually going to go into space. We're going to go undersea into a crazy lab filled with robots. It's a good time. And then there's another area with ever-shifting walls. So, like I said, if you're in the market for some unique platforming and some areas, like just a lot of different areas that each give a different feeling, a different experience, this game really drives it home. All right, once again, we use our cool sliding tech. I just want to touch that, and then we can come on down here. So this is the end of the world. We won't be seeing too much of it this path through. I mean, I guess we'll see a good bit of this, but but we will be seeing a lot more of it after we pick up our next ability. All right. So we'll be dropping through here. When we go to the next area, after our next ability, we'll actually be going up instead of down. So you may notice a lot of this darkness here. This is actually what our next ability is going to be focused on. So right now we can't touch any of that darkness. It will hurt us. Wow, I really lucked out from that fireball disappearing. That could have been trouble. Anyway, right now we can't touch any of that. It hurts us. Instead, we are... beautiful. We are going to have to go around it until we pick up this ability. So the next ability we're picking up is going to allow us to traverse this darkness, and it is very, very helpful for us. Oh, that's not a crystal arrow. Beautiful. Okay, I actually would like to skip this throne if I can, and I did. Beautiful. The reason for this is I'm actually going to be using our Dimensional Vial, the one that we purchased quite a while ago from our map-making friend, to get out of this area once I'm done with it. But in the meantime, we get to do some fun slides. So again, this, first of all, sliding, probably my favorite part of this game. This area, one of the better areas for sliding. Once you know what you're doing, for example, like that, once you know what you're doing, it is just so fun to slide across these rooms. Now, some of them, unfortunately, some of the sections here, unfortunately, don't lend themselves to the slides as much. Okay, so there's a good example. I mentioned earlier if we miss the... Okay, if we miss the shield timing, then we actually get a long cooldown for the shield. So you'll notice the shield is still on cooldown because I slightly missed. Well, of course it went away in the transition, but hopefully you understand the point. We'll be seeing that again, and actually it becomes very important. In some fights, the strategies with the melee build heavily involve using the shield. You may have noticed that in the Devourer 2 fight. I needed the shield at quite a lot of times to properly defend against some of the attacks. This is a general trend, and if we miss a shield, it could be a problem for us. I think I will take a death here just to have the heal for this next section. I don't think we've actually seen it yet, but if you die to an enemy, you actually have to kill that enemy in order to get your body back effectively. And I haven't really talked about the actual penalty for death in this game, because we've always gotten our body back. If you don't get your body back, then you actually aren't able to gain any experience, and you actually have a cracked container for the blood that you use. So it hurts in a number of ways. So we really want to avoid that if possible. Yeah, unfortunately, overshot the platform just a little there. Okay, so we're near the end of this area. There's a couple more of these to go through. Shoot. There we go. And then we can get a full heal. Okay, so this is the boss of this area. It is actually a dark version of ourselves. So I haven't talked at all about the lore of this game, but actually this game is based on a effectively a rebirth cycle and balancing between the King of Darkness, which we play as, and the Queen of Light, which we will be hearing more about later. This is effectively an even darker version of the King of Darkness, and it is in classic fighting a dark version of yourself fashion. Has all of our abilities, but better. You may notice that the health for this boss is actually in the upper right. I completely missed there. That was unfortunate. Alright, and this is one more place where the shield becomes quite important. It is possible with crystal arrows to get around some of these hits, but it's a bit painful. But yeah, the health in the upper right shows what we need to do to actually get this kill. I need to just reduce the health to 0 by hitting him a set number of times. So the damage I'm dealing doesn't actually matter. And also, he has iframes after we hit him, just like we have iframes after he hits us. So in some sense, it's a fair fight, although his health value would beg to differ. But we get the kill anyway. Right. Once again, not too hard of a fight once you're used to it. But you know, this fight can be a bit of a wall casualty. It's a bit hard. As I mentioned, all of his attacks are better than our versions of the same attacks, so that's always painful. Okay, so now that we've done this, we can go ahead and quit out, but astute observers may have noticed I didn't do any checkpoint skips as I was coming in here. There's a good reason for that, and that reason is that there's actually a skill point that I'm going to pick up here. That is just beyond this area, which I can now enter. So I mentioned we should be able to go into the darkness. Oh, wow, okay. I didn't have a crystal arrow up. We should be able to go into the darkness, and that's what our next ability was focused around. And this is the reward of that. I can go and pick up the skill point, and then I can use that dimensional vial that I purchased earlier to get on out of here. All right, and now we get to see a bit more of the end of the world. This area is massive, and it is one of the prettiest areas, in my opinion, and also one that can be very frustrating to platform in when enemies like this dragon like to get in your way. So definitely a fun area. I think when I first entered this area casually, my thought was, nope, and I immediately left. So hopefully, you know, I have warmer thoughts on the matter now, but it's definitely an area that that can be a bit painful at first. All right, so sometimes there's a green dragon that gets in our way here. Oh, yep. Unfortunate. So because of that, I'm gonna come on up and grab this. And this maybe will get him out of the way. Unfortunate. Okay, so I'm gonna die to this so that I can respawn the dragon somewhere else. And then we'll kill it to get our soul back. As I mentioned, we do have to kill enemies to get the soul. And now the dragon is gone. Okay, just a bit unfortunate, but I just needed to get this skill point in safety. Okay, we can go ahead and quit on out of there. All right, so we are going to be climbing up here, and you'll notice it starts to get darker as we go further up into the atmosphere. This is actually going to lead us all the way out into space, which is one of the more sort of surreal things when I was playing this game. It starts out, you know, simple enough. We're a king with a sword, and we're fighting enemies. In a normal world, we go through, you know, a crystal area, we go through a forge. It all is, you know, real enough. And now we're just going into space. And I love that. I adore that about this game, that, that it just starts to introduce more and more really fantastical areas to the game. And as you'll see, the cosmos especially are an area that really things get insane. So that's coming up here as soon as I can make my way into this. The gravity changes here, so it gets a little bit awkward. All right. So now we're in the cosmos, and the first thing you might notice is that we're upside down. Well, that's just because the planet was upside down. So actually, as we go through this, you'll see that there's a ton of little planets that we're going around. These little planets each have their own gravity, which is represented by the rings. And all of these different gravities, none of them overlap, luckily, but they alternate very often between where you're being pushed and pulled to. If you're in the outside, if you're away from any of the orbits of these planets, then it acts a bit differently. It acts just like normal. So down on the screen is down for us. We get pulled basically back to the Earth that we came from. But we have to work our way around all of these planets, and it is a time. It is a time, all right. When I first got to this area, I think I was just completely blown away. And, you know, I struggled, obviously, to get my head around some of this platforming. But like I said, if you are in the market for some unique platforming, this game really starts to bring it out. It is good. All right, we'll go ahead and grab that heal. Okay, so now we're warping into what is actually the main area of the cosmos, and we will we'll get a good example of just what this whole area is about pretty soon here. You can see there's basically variants on some of the enemies that we fought before. And we'll be seeing a lot more of that as we go. I don't want the map, good sir. I want a dimensional recharge. Okay, so once again, just buying one of these dimensional recharges from our lovely map-making friend, Lord Drake. And we will be continuing on our way. So, the way that these cosmos are organized is actually pretty fun. So what it is a series of 4 basically elemental-based planet groups. So this is the fire one, as you might be able to guess. These planets that I'm jumping onto actually explode if you stay there for a minute, so we need to get out of them quickly. And that's just what I was doing. I was here to pick this up, and now I will go ahead and quit out. Back to the torch I passed. But this is the fire area, and each area has its own type of planet, which causes some kind of problems. The fire area has these planets, which are large and explode, and you can, you know, obviously see how that causes all kinds of issues. There are 3 other elemental areas. One is light. One is darkness, which actually requires the ability we just picked up that allows us to go through the dark areas. And the last one is ice. So we will be going through these areas pretty much just all 4 in a row here, and then we will be doing our best to finish off the cosmos. But yeah, this is a lot of fun. It is, I think one of the things that I love about the cosmos, like, on top of the fact that we have this crazy gravitational platforming happening, and these are some of the more insane bits, by the way. These are the insides of tiny planets. In addition to that, I like the fact that it's broken into these 4 different elements, which gives it sort of a unique flavor for each of these little sub-areas. I'm going to take an intentional death there, just so that I have health and don't die to one of the upcoming bombs. But this area really doesn't get stale, even as you're going through the whole cosmos, which is important because... You can make this with the double jump, but I am struggling at the moment, so I'll use an arrow. As you're going through the cosmos, you might be stuck here for quite a while the first couple of times. Oh, no. That was unfortunate. It takes a while to get used to the gravity, obviously, but once you do, it is a lot of fun. And I think honestly, these become some of my favorite areas. I think they're definitely challenging. I would certainly not deny that, but they are a lot more fun once you start to get used to how to deal with the shifted perspective here. Oops. All right, so we got a skill point there. Skill points give us heals, which is nice, although I was quite full on health actually already. Oh, I still don't have a shield. That's what's happening. Okay. No. Yeah, so you can see the platforming gets tricky at times. Okay, so we're going to try to do this. A death here is not too bad. We'll try to do it first try. You know, big surprise there, I suppose. But this isn't one entire chase sequence, and if we get hit, we get brought back to the torch anyway. I should also mention, when you're in these areas, the way that the arrows work is a bit different from how they work. Nice, we got it first try. It's a bit different than how they work normally, in that when you shoot an arrow upward, it faces up relative to your character and not relative to the camera. So that's part of what makes this area so challenging. You have to understand exactly how to shoot the arrows to deal with it. To go this way. So this is one of the elements. You can see all the elements listed there. We have the ice, we have the light, and the dark, and we will be getting these one at a time. So far that was just the fire. In each of these areas, there are a couple of upgrades that we're going to be picking up. We picked up a health upgrade in the fire area. We'll pick up a skill point in the ice. And in the dark and the light, we'll just be picking money up. But yeah, there's everybody's favorite thing, ice physics, on top of the additional crazy gravity. So, you know, you can see just how completely reasonable these areas are. Honestly, though, I really like the Cosmos. I think it's, once again, one of the more unique platforming sections of any game I've played, really, but like especially a game like this. Unfortunately, jumped just at the wrong time there. Oh, perfect. Okay, cool. So there's the skill point I'm trying to pick up, but we can go ahead and quit out now. The ice section is, in my opinion, the hardest. The main reason for that is just that the ice physics obviously is hard to deal with when you're also dealing with changing gravity. And because this is the Aeterna mode of the game, this is supposed to be the easier mode. So they've scaled down a lot of the challenges in the other sections. I had already used all of my arrows. Incredible. But because ice physics can't really be scaled down very much, this area retains pretty much all of its challenge from Noctis mode. It's still a bit harder. There are, you know, more spikes in Noctis mode, but the spikes weren't what was really causing the problems. The ice physics was. So it's definitely one of those sections that more or less just keeps its difficulty, for better or for worse. All right. You may notice that with these bomb enemies, when they explode, they also leave behind ice crystals in the ice area. In the fire area, they shut out fire, and the darkness and light areas have their own variants of this enemy that also shoot out various darkness or light beams, and that's just one more thing. Even when there is the same enemy in different areas with a different reskin, it adds a new wrinkle to it. It's not just taking the enemy and reskinning it, but it's giving it a new ability, a you know, a new trigger on death, a new primary attack. And I think that's one thing that really keeps this game fresh as you're going through the areas. You can understand the basics of how the enemy works, but still be in a position where you need to kind of still relearn these enemies. And I think it's a lot of fun. Okay, so this was the ice one. That was pretty smooth. Honestly, not too terrible. Okay, so that is 2 of the 4 elements down. We still obviously have the others to go. So now we're going to move on to the light. And the light, in my opinion, is one of the easier ones once we get inside, but it's actually one of the harder ones to get to. And you'll probably see how that works pretty soon. But a big part of it is those dark enemies. As I mentioned, they have their own brand of punishment when they die. The dark ones leave a ring of darkness that stops me from shooting arrows. So that's actually a mechanic that I didn't really talk about yet. But the dark sections that I have gained the ability to pass through don't actually allow me to use arrows while I'm inside of them. And those dark enemies also do the same thing. They leave an area behind that stops me from shooting arrows. It can be kind of obnoxious if you're trying to teleport somewhere. Just a second here. Nope. All right, let's not go just directly into the sun. Okay, let's try it this way. Sometimes these arrows are a bit tough. As they get, like, just out of the range, it can be hard to manage. No. All right. No. Yeah, this is, it's a bit tricky to get through this area. So this is what I mean. Getting to the light area, I think, is one of the harder parts. But once you're there, then doing the light area is actually relatively easy. Am I going to make it? No. Okay, that's fine. We can go around this way. I was hoping to be able to skip to it. Ah. No. Okay. This is definitely one of the harder areas to actually get to. Hopefully, once we are through, we will have no issues. Okay, we do need to pick this chest up. And once again, these little darkness beams can become a bit of a pain for us because I can't shoot any arrows to get through here. Okay, that's better. And there is our exit. Oh no. This is one thing, I haven't talked much about this, but I actually don't pick up one of the arrow upgrades. So normally at this point casually, you actually have 3 arrows, not 2. And this helps an immense amount with some of these areas because a lot of them sort of implicitly expect you to have 3 arrows. In Noctis mode, it's actually required to pick up the 3rd arrow as far as we currently know, I believe. But in Aeterna mode, you don't need it. Nothing actually hard requires 3 arrows, just wants 3 arrows. So some of these areas become a little bit more painful than they would be otherwise. But this is the inside of the light area. As you can see, it's not too bad compared to the ice or the fire. So the inside is pretty easy. The outside is very hard. But that's it for the light. We're going to use our dimensional vial now to get out of here, and we can go and do the dark area next. So that is what we're going to do. Go ahead and teleport back here. Beautiful. We need one more chest in the dark area. Oh, shoot. Why did I have regular arrows equipped? One more chest in the dark area, and we'll be almost good on money. We have a couple more things that we're going to do. Okay, so as you can see, each of these planets is surrounded by a little circle of darkness, and we had to go and kill our evil doppelganger in order to even get the ability to enter this area. However, we will also need to be careful about our use of arrows through this area, because as I mentioned before, when you're in the darkness, it actually stops you from using arrows, which can be painful if you're trying to get somewhere, and actually causes a problem for us if we want to use our slides. Because as I mentioned earlier, the way to get out of a slide is to shoot an arrow. So actually you can get locked by having a slide active and losing your momentum in a dark area, which is obviously something we want to avoid. So hopefully we won't face that issue here today. There's the last chest that I wanted to pick up, and we're gonna head on down. Of course, anytime that happens, a simple save and quit does fix it. And due to the frequent checkpoints through the rest of the game, save and quits are pretty much no time loss at all. Okay, so for this area, it alternates between dark and light areas. So we are able to use our arrows in some of them, but not in all of them. All right, and I actually want to skip this if I can, and I can. Beautiful. Okay. That checkpoint is a little bit tricky sometimes. All right, so again, as you go through this area, you're dealing, of course, with the spikes. You're dealing, of course, with the darkness, but also with the changing gravity. And the combination of all of these things can be quite challenging. This one in particular gave me so many problems casually, but it turns out if you just shoot an arrow completely neutrally, it works perfectly. So yeah, just keep that in mind if you're ever in the market for doing this game casually or as a run. Okay, skipping that checkpoint allows me to warp back directly to here, which saves us a bit of time. Now we head back on left. As you saw, I was able to shoot an arrow there. Oh, I didn't want this checkpoint, but that's okay. We'll hopefully skip the next one. I'm going to shoot that, skip that checkpoint, and then we need to go through this. This is an area where, if I'm not careful, I could have gotten soft locked. You saw there, I was about to enter the darkness while sliding. That is something you need to be careful about. As I mentioned before, it is an issue. All right, so we went ahead and lit this. Unfortunately, I meant to skip a checkpoint, so it means I'll have to do just a little bit of extra platforming, but it's not too much. So we go ahead and quit out of here, and we can come back there. All right, so we are almost done with the Cosmos. Now, when I say done with the Cosmos, we won't be fully done for quite a while, because there is the effective boss for this area. In reality, it's just a platforming challenge and not a boss fight, but it is a rather difficult platforming challenge, so we will be coming back here for that later. In the meantime, we will actually be going to the Undersea Fortress, one of the final areas that we haven't yet seen. And in that area, there's quite a bit that we have to do. Before I do that, let me finish these upgrades good. I need one more upgrade, and we'll be able to get that inside the Undersea Fortress. Perfect. Okay, so the reason that we do the Cosmos sort of in between doing this this undersea fortress is we want to get extra skill upgrades. So you notice I picked up quite a lot of upgrades in the Cosmos. That will help us a lot for the undersea fortress, for the boss in particular. So this next area coming up has, first of all, some of the better music. Second of all, some of the more fun platforming, and third of all, a boss that will either seem very trivial or drive you absolutely insane. So this is a fun area all around, I would say. But yeah, we get a lot of cool slide movement. We have a lot of checkpoint skips. This area is rather tech dense. It's pretty good. So we'll be working our way through here. We have a number of things to do here. Most of them revolve around picking up access cards, which will allow us to use the main elevator to get to different stages. And we actually need to do this area before we finish the Cosmos, because the item that we pick up at the end here feeds back into the Cosmos. So this is one of the stages of the game where, as far as we know, I did not mean to jump there, or to dash there. As far as we know, we don't have any skips for, but we'll see. Now, you may notice that I was sliding backwards there. That happens when I jump off a wall, and I think it's really fun. Okay. That was a lot of good sliding. We had to cut it short a little early. Good. Okay, now I can quit back out to that lantern, and we can continue on the way. Alrighty. Yeah, so overall, this area is one of the more, as I said, tech-dense areas. There's a lot of good speed tech here, but there's also, it's also quite difficult in terms of just going through it without taking too much damage to enemies. So this is where our shield is going to come in handy, especially when we're sliding, and we're going to rely pretty heavily on it. But as I mentioned, we need to pick up basically access cards to access the various levels. We work our way slowly up to the top floor. All right, this floor here is one of the first main floors with checkpoint skips, so I need to be careful. Ah, damn. I need to be careful here about not triggering the checkpoints if I can. It is easy to accidentally trigger some of these, so just going to try my best. Those enemies are the bane of my existence. Alright, we'll pick up a little more money. We do need 62,000 by the time we get to the final shop. So that's the number that we're looking for. We're on track to hit that number, but we do need to be just a little bit careful to make sure we do a couple of extra pickups. Okay. Okay, so what we've done there is we hit a switch, and this is the other main mechanic in this area. So we hit a switch that changes the platforms that are color-coded from red to blue, or blue to red, rather. And what this is going to do, first of all, it's going to allow us to go and pick up our final... Ah, shoot, I was too slow on my shield. Our final skill point that I alluded to earlier. But then... Ooh, ah. No. Oh no, am I gonna die here? I am! Shoot. That was unfortunate. I got a bit caught there. Oh, I don't have my shield. That's what's happening. Okay. I need to pick this up. I think I can skip this like... No, I can't skip it like that. Dang it. Unfortunate. You can skip that checkpoint if you're careful, and I was hoping to, but unfortunately I just missed it. Okay, so that's the last skill point that we need. I'm going to use that skill point to get the next big upgrade, and this upgrade is pretty important. It is the capstone of the melee skill tree, and what it does is it gives us an extra hit on every hit. This is basically the same effect as the gem that we have, but it stacks on top of it. Also, I think that I need to teleport really quickly here, and the reason is I need to set my save point to be on this one. For some reason, the game doesn't save your save point here, so if I miss that checkpoint skip earlier, I have to do this, but it's not too bad. Okay, so for this next section, once again, I'm going to be skipping all of the checkpoints that I can. Oh, am I going to make that? I'm not. Okay. So we're going to skip all the checkpoints that we can. There's a few checkpoints. This is one of the first ones. That one is relatively easy to skip. The second one is also relatively easy to skip, but the third one is quite tricky, so hopefully we'll be able to do it. Alright, so just a bit of fun platforming here where we get to hit a lot of switches. This is the final checkpoint skip, and unfortunately I missed that shot. Okay, I need to wait for that one to despawn so that I can get this one. There we go. Cool. And now when I quit out, it should take me all the way back to the elevator, which is what I want. Okay, good. So from here we can go up to deck level B. This is the big section of the undersea fortress, and one where we unfortunately can't really checkpoint skip. In this section, there's quite a lot of platforming that we have to do, but there's also a throne. So we'll be activating that throne. You can sit on it for safety. I don't think I'll be doing that right now. Here it is. All right, and up we go. So we've activated that throne. We will be using it later. Now, there's a lot of platforming in this area. Luckily, there's not too much that we have to actually fight. We can slide through most things or use our shields, but there's quite a lot of platforming that we do have to do. Get through that room. In some of these rooms coming up, we will also be taking a brief detour for some extra money. This one. And we are at 45,000 total. So we get a lot of money from quests as we continue, and this should actually be pretty much fine on money for the rest of the run. So we're in decent shape here. We can stop for extra chests in the next area if I decide to do that, but we'll see. Oh, yeah, we actually can't avoid this. Okay. Alright, this is one of those areas where the game kind of expects a third arrow, so we just have to pause for a little bit. The third arrow, by the way, you actually pick it up inside of the west wall, where I fought that second version of the boss with many eyes. So that's about how long we should have had our third arrow. But of course, we actually don't need it, and it takes quite a while to get, so we have skipped it. Alright, so now we just have to slide on out of these rooms. We picked up our next access code, which brings us to level A. Level A is actually pretty fast, but to get there, we just need to come back around here. This whole area basically goes in a loop, so this is right back onto the elevator. Okay, deck A is where we really get to play around with the swaps between the red and the blue switches. So these start red, as you can see. We are going to switch them to blue to come on over here and to get a whoops. Oh no, that is not a kind hazard respawn. To get a half of an access card. Now, the other half of the access card will be in the other half of deck A, which we actually need the switches to be blue once again to do. So we hit them back to blue before we quit out. All right, now once we quit out, we can head on to the right. We have one more half of an access card to go, and then we'll be in the core. Now, that means that we'll be able to fight the next major boss, and you'll be able to see the joy that is the aptly named Alien DJ boss in certain communities. Now, this boss here, this boss coming up is very much a DPS check. This boss, if you have enough damage, will be one of the easier bosses, and if you don't have enough damage, will be one of the hardest. So it can be a bit of a frustrating fight when you're playing this game casually, but in the speedrun, it is very much the opposite. All right, so you got to see some of the joys of the red and blue switching there. Okay, now on to this boss we go. Now we've got all of our upgrades. We've got our extra gem, so we have as much damage as we're going to have in this run effectively. So hopefully this will be enough for what we need. Well, we'll find out. The way this boss works is there are two little gems that spawn on the side. Once you kill them, it goes into this phase, which is a phase where you can actually damage the boss himself. If you don't kill these enemies quickly enough, then he actually goes into a very, very prolonged set of phases that are very difficult to deal with. So as you can see, this fight's already over. It's extremely quick when you are able to deal enough damage to kill those two extra enemies quickly. And when you are not able to deal that damage, it becomes a very difficult fight. So blink and you miss it in the speedrun, but casually it is a pain. All right, so this is the reason that we came here. We just picked up something called the Chaos Crystal. This we're going to be taking to the last major area that we haven't seen yet in the left half of the map, and then back into space. So here we go. We are done with the undersea fortress, making our way through this. You can see how this run ends up taking quite a while. There are many areas that we have to go through, and most of them quite difficult. Okay, so we head back to the Infinite Sea, and we are going to do quite a long climb. Now, this climb is one that can fall apart quite easily, so we need to make sure that we're not falling. As you can see, there's a lot of platforms. Some of them are temporary platforms, meaning they will despawn if you stay on them too long. Others are permanent platforms, but no matter what they are, if you fall, they are not going to save you. So we need to be quite careful here with the way that we do this climb. So you'll see I'm taking this just a little bit slow, just to make sure that we're able to do the climb. All right, and that is it. Okay, so now we're into what is a very, very divisive area in terms of whether you love it or you hate it. This area is completely insane and unlike anything I've seen in a platformer of this type before. It is an area where the walls are fake or real, and it's not exactly obvious which until you shoot an arrow at them. So luckily, because we are speedrunning this, we know which areas, which walls, or which spikes are real, where the hidden spikes are, etc. But when you are first playing this game, as you can see, this platform here, completely fake. This one here, also fake, but the enemy there is real. Things like that just get absolutely insane. So it takes quite a lot to get through. To make matters worse, the transitions don't necessarily go where you might expect them to go. I'm also stopping to pick up a chest, which is hidden under there, just to make sure we pad out our... oh, I did not mean to teleport there. Just to make sure that we pad out our money value here. We don't want to be short on money at the end of the run. This is a fun little skip. You can just jump and hit this. It's actually kind of difficult to get that otherwise, so I think that was one of the more fun discoveries. Somehow it took sort of an unreasonably long time for that to be discovered. I think that's a discovery in the past couple of weeks, honestly, and this has been run for a while. Alright, we will work our way on up here. So that is the first of 3 eyes that we're picking up. We're going to put those in here in this central room, but you see we can get dumped back into the central room from a number of different room transitions. So this area is one that can very quickly get very confusing. There are also a lot of enemies that are around. These enemies are hidden unless you shoot an arrow. However, you can tell where they are based on their trails that they leave. They leave a little pink trail behind them. All right, that shot is actually impossible. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Okay, it's fine. This is a little bit frustrating. You have to work your way through these. Some of these blocks are fake, and these transitions don't go where you necessarily would think that they go. So there's a bit of worming your way around there. I know when I played that game, or when I played this game casually, that room took me an absolute eternity. Okay. All right, and this is the second Oracle Eye. We will be working our way now for the third. So this area is just tricky platforming, but with the added confusion of the way that this area is structured. Honestly, you know, again, this area is a love it or hate it kind of area. You can see I know which areas to, or which which walls are fake and which ones are real, but if you aren't aware of it, it can be a struggle to get through this area. Alright, and we are nearly done with the platforming here. We have this room to go. We will be skipping this chest as we have enough money. I hope I'm correct about that, but we'll find out the hard way. Alright, and there is our final eye, so we are able to go and see the Oracle now. Here we go. Okay, so this character is actually one that's pretty important plot-wise. This cutscene explains a lot of it, which of course we're going to immediately skip. So, moving on to mash through the text that she tells us, we'll be able to discover absolutely nothing. Alright, so now that we've learned nothing, we can go ahead and head on back into this room. Now, this room actually leads directly back into the throne room. So you may remember that I passed through this throne room to get to this room earlier. Actually, it's all a big lie. It's not a circle. If I go left through that transition, it doesn't bring me back to that room. So that area is very confusing when you're going through it casually. All right. So now we go ahead and put these in finally, and we are going to do what is called the Chaos Chase. So this is a bit of a long little cinematic here as the 4 elements combine. They draw these 4 planets that are up here closer to us. I think it's supposed to zoom out here, but for some reason it doesn't. That's okay. And then we go up and we're gonna go and fight. Well, fight is a strong word. We're gonna go and run from chaos. All right, so we have 55,000. Like I said, we would like 62,000. But we will get some more money later that we can use to pick up our last upgrades if we so desire. Oop. That's what happens if you just barely miss the gravity circle of some of these planets. Okay, so this chase sequence is another. It's once again located on these planets that have their own gravitational orbits. It's honestly a lot of fun. I think this is a pretty cool platforming chase. If you're too slow, a full screen wipe will kill you and send you back to the lantern. And you have to go through basically all sorts of planets of the type that we've been dealing with. So it's a nice little recap. It's a good time. All right, that is a heal if we need it. We don't because we just came here via a throne. Now this chase sequence, if you're doing it correctly, you can do it mostly on the tops of planets at least. So that definitely makes life a bit easier. You're not having to deal quite so much with the gravity changes that we had to deal with on other planets. But you'll notice there's these exploding red planets from the fire area. Here's one of the light planets from the light area. You know, again, a sun planet from the fire area. You can see it's a mix of all the different planet types that you've faced in order to get here. This here is an ice planet. That one can be a bit tricky if we're not careful. So ideally if we hold right there, it works. But that one is a bit finicky. We have to be a bit careful. All right, we have a few more of these planets. All right. And we're nearing the end of the chase sequence now. This planet here is fun. It has these giant suns on them, basically. Which I think is cool. And the idea is you have to actually go off planet to avoid them. All right, so that's the end of the chaos chase. Sometimes there can be a glitch here where it will actually kill you during that final cinematic. Luckily, we didn't get it this time. Okay, so this entire time, to this point through the game, we've been working to collect 7 different fragments, which are going to allow us to ascend the stairs up to the palace. And we finally are about to collect number 7 here now that we finished this chaos chase sequence. So we will be on our way up to the palace very shortly. We do need to go and pick up the 7th fragment from the Oracle. So we're going to come in here to do it. We once again have to go through these rooms, which you may recognize from before. Oops. And once again, a lot of these are hidden walls, or otherwise hard to tell what's going on here. But if you work your way up, oh, Yes, that is how that works, isn't it? Beautiful. Okay. So we checkpointed at the throne, and we'll go ahead and go into the Oracle room again. Once we talk to the Oracle, this will be the final fragment that we need. Okay, so we just need to do a little bit of shopping. We won't be able to buy our skill point yet. That's actually not essential. So maybe we will go ahead and come back for that later. But we do want one last health fragment, which will give us our 7th health for safety, and then a gem slot, which is going to be actually quite important for us, as we'll be able to equip Leech with it. All right, so after this little sequence, we have our final fragment. Alrighty. Now this will allow us to ascend into the steps to the palace. There we go. And yeah, that's we're coming up on the final sections of the game here. So we're going to head back to the first town that we spawned in. Always back to the beginning before we can go to the end. We're going to do just a little bit of shopping, and then we're going to head into the steps. So this is where we're going to insert those fragments in just a second. But first, shopping. Always exciting. Gotta prepare for a trip. Okay, I want to buy the first thing, which luckily means I can mash. I can't buy the skill point just yet. Shoot. This is always careful. You can't mash too hard. All right. We will have enough to buy that in just a minute, though. Okay, so now we get to go through this little cutscene. This is the inserting of all the 7 fragments. We could have done this as we went through the game, but of course it's faster to do all 7 at once. Until you have 7, it doesn't actually do anything. If you're curious what all these were from, you can kind of tell by the symbols on them where they've come from. So it's a little bit from all over the game. So we picked up, for example, from the worm that we fought, or from the phoenix, or from the light tower. All these things are places that we've picked up fragments as we've gone along through the game. And here's the final one that we got from the Chaos Chase, or after the Chaos Chase rather, and we will be heading in. Unfortunately, this is actually the one of 2 cutscenes we can't skip. The final cutscene we also can't skip, which is a bit unfortunate, but luckily we do get just a tiny bit of lore here. We see our ascension to the palace stairs. Exciting. All right. Okay, so here we go. Now we're in the Royal Stairway, which is the path up to the palace, which will be our final area of the game. We are going to work our way up. There are 2 more really difficult bosses, and one quite really... each of these sections coming up is quite a difficult platforming challenge as well. On Aeterna mode, it is not as much of a platforming challenge as we face in Noctis mode, but it's still quite difficult. I'm very smart. Okay. It's still quite difficult to do this climb without taking too many hits, and especially as you try to go quickly, this climb becomes more and more difficult. Alright, so we work our way up. This has a fun little slide. I think sliding is the #1 thing that got me into this speed game. It is so fun, and I can't recommend it enough. Specifically sliding. Alright, so we're trying to go up here. I need to be a bit careful. So once again, since we only have 2 arrows and not 3, there are certain things that the game expects us to be able to do, and we have to wait a second to recharge our arrows to do them. But again, it is definitely definitely faster to be able to skip the third arrow. That would require one more trip back into the temple where we did those 3 other doors, because the third arrow is also behind a door. Okay, so now we're on to this part of the climb. This has basically 2 types of obstacles. One is the spikes that you can see there, and the other is these little blobs of light that you can see there. Both of these are annoying in their own ways, but the blobs are far more annoying because they move. Shoot. So we mostly use our shield to get past the blobs as we climb up here. And this is again where the shield is indispensable. Oops. Oh, it respawns me there. I actually have not ever taken a hazard hit there before. Okay, I simply cannot make this shot today. We'll do it this way. Alrighty. So yeah, this is a pretty extended climb. This whole area can be pretty tricky to go through, especially on Noctis mode. It's a little bit easier on Aeterna mode. Like, for example, a lot of these platforms would have spikes on them, or more spikes on them in the case where there are spikes. But overall, it's not too terribly bad. And there are frequent checkpoints. Since we're just climbing, this, for example, is one area where we really need to wait. Since we're just climbing, it doesn't really hurt to take all the checkpoints, and if you need to take a death, you can. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and sit there. Actually, I am going to go back real quickly to go buy our last skill point, which will give us just a plus 10% damage, just to hopefully catch some extra breakpoints here. This is a very, very quick detour for a safety. So ideally we would have had this earlier, but we would have needed to pick up a couple of extra chests to do it. So instead we take the money that we get from the later parts of the game. Okay, cool. So we go back in, and coming up next is one of the 2 remaining bosses, which is the boss called Aurora, and she is quite difficult. So we'll have a bit of a fun time facing her. So we're going to go ahead and use that skill point that I picked up, and then we're going to start this fight. This fight is very, very pattern dependent. So if I get a good pattern, it can be over in a heartbeat. If I get a bad pattern, it can go on for quite a while. If we die, it's not too bad. We respawn back at the start, and we get to go again. Hopefully we won't die too much. So she doesn't have a lot of health, but she has enough health to where we can't just fully damage tank our way through the fight, sadly. So we have to only half damage tank our way through the fight. Oh, we're starting with this attack. So this is what I mean when I say half damage tank. Yes, and see, that actually brought her down to red health, which, if you remember my description from earlier, actually means she's in her last third of health. She's very hard to hit in that attack, unfortunately. And in this attack, unfortunately. This attack is a fun one where she actually summons... Ah, shoot. Okay, this should be her dead. Yes, it is. Okay, so when she dies, she actually does one final attack, which can actually be pretty difficult to dodge. when you are first doing this boss, so it's a bit of a tricky one, but once you get used to it, it's not too bad. Okay, so not the best patterns, but overall a pretty clean fight. Okay, and now we continue on into the palace. The palace is the final area of this game, and it is... Oh, it's a difficult one. This area is a lot of fun when you're playing through casually, and it is a fitting end to the game, in my opinion. It is no easy feat to go through the palace, especially in Noctis mode. The platforming in here is very difficult. The bosses in here, well, the boss in here is tough. The enemies are hard. It is a good time all around. We're going to try to... What? Wait, what hit me? I actually have no idea what hit me there, but that's fine. We're going to try to go through, obviously, as quickly as we can. I took the intentional death there. Hello? I am so confused as to what was hitting me there. But all right. Anyway, I took the intentional death there so that we wouldn't die to something strange later, and I guess I'm glad I did. Anyway, luckily, as with most areas in this game, nothing is too terribly punishing to die to because there are checkpoints absolutely everywhere. Now, we will be working our way through this. The way that this palace works, for those of you who haven't played this game before, is there are two halves to it. So a right half and a left half. And we are going to be working through these two halves sequentially. So we're going to do the right half first, and then we'll do the left half. Once we've done both, we can access the final boss of the game. And that will be the Queen of Light. So those of you, unfortunately my shield does not recharge quite that quickly. Those of you around since the beginning who maybe remember a little bit of the lore, the Queen of Light is our counterpart, and we effectively go through cycles fighting her, and the two sides each trade back victories, effectively. Right now, the Queen is in a state of victory, and we are going to fight her to try to usher in the new darkness era, effectively. I was a bit slow on my shield recharge there. Okay, I'm going to die intentionally again, just for the quick heal. As I mentioned, there's a lot of difficult platforming in this area. And I would prefer to have the heals if I can get them. Now, in this area, this is the right half of the zone. We're not too worried about anything over here. The checkpoints are frequent enough that we are able to mostly recover if we need to. However, on the left half, we're actually going to be performing a lot of checkpoint skips. So when we get over there, we're going to need... shoot. Okay. I'm in a rather unfortunate position there. We're going to need to be careful on the second half of things once we get there. And the reason is that we don't have the ability to simply take a death in the second half of the palace. Luckily, in the first half, we do. All right. So that is the first piece of the puzzle. This is basically half the palace has now been turned to darkness. And now we are going to use our last dimensional vial to return to the throne that we took just before we fought Aurora. We'll come back into the palace, and then we will do the left half. Now, when we do that, it will spit us out a lot closer to where we need to go, which is why we're doing the checkpoint skips. So hopefully we will have a relatively clean left half, but even in the case where you die after some of the checkpoint skips, it's no more than about a minute of time loss, so it's really not too terrible. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue. Hopefully we don't get randomly hit by anything here. I honestly have no idea what was hitting me there before. Shoot. Alright. As you can see, there's a lot of enemies in these areas, and they each have a thing or two to say for us. And most of the things are not good. One thing that's kind of fun about this palace area is that all of the transitions are really, really tall. So it's a little bit silly, but you basically you can't come at these transitions from below very easily. Oh God. Okay, that's unfortunate. This is one of the harder platforming sections here. And that is the reason. Okay. I may take an intentional death at the last checkpoint that we get, and the reason for that is I don't want to die past the checkpoint skips. We do have a number of checkpoints that we still get to take here, luckily. But soon we will be... oops. Well, that's fine. Soon we will be out of them. Yeah, you can see this transition. Even double jumping from the bottom doesn't get you into it. You have to actually walk from the wall there. Oops. Alright, this is a bit dangerous. I don't have a potion, unfortunately, to use as a protection. Okay. This is bad because I don't have my shield. Okay. It's fine. Who was even worried? Okay, I don't want to die to you, I'll die to you. So I want this to basically just get most of a heal. Now, because I had to die, it's not ideal, but that's okay. Okay, so let's move on through here. As I mentioned, we'll be starting the checkpoint skips soon. So we're not doing them just yet. Interesting that that enemy decides to shoot up. I've noticed that quite a bit. Okay, good. So that last checkpoint I took is in fact the last one that we'll get. Here is where I need to start the checkpoint skips. So the reason is we are going to be teleporting back to that location once we get through this. There are 2 more checkpoints I need to skip, and the last one is the most difficult of them to skip, as is typical fashion with these checkpoint skips. This one is a bit of a pain to skip. It's not hard to skip, you just go under it, but it's annoying because of the enemy. Okay, these shots are actually impossible, and getting them is a major glitch, but we got through it. Okay. So this enemy gets in the way while we're trying to do the checkpoint skip quite a lot. Okay, we got it. Good. Okay, so we can go ahead and quit out here, and then it is time for the queen. So, all we have to do is work our way back through that last bit of tower, and then over to where the queen is, and we can start the last fight. So, we're near the end. The queen is probably the most difficult fight in the game, or close to it. There's one other boss that is probably as or more difficult, but with a very different attack pattern. But the queen definitely lives up to the title of final boss in this game, and is one that is still difficult even with the damage upgrades that we've picked up. So a death to the queen is definitely possible in these runs, but obviously not ideal. With the damage we've picked up, it's usually okay to it's usually enough to first try the queen, but we will see how this goes. All right, that's not what I meant to do. All right, I'm going to see if I can get a potion here, and I can. Okay, that helps a lot. So getting that one potion to have for the queen is a good bit of peace of mind. If you don't get it there, you can buy one, but I would probably continue without. Yeah, so you see a full jump there doesn't even work. You have to go up. Okay. I do need to equip Leech, which I just realized I've forgotten to do. Yes. Okay, that would have helped through the rest of the palace. Okay, in we go. So it is time to fight the queen. There's a bit of a long cutscene to start, which again we cannot skip. And then, of course, the queen fight itself. This fight takes a few minutes, and it is probably the most difficult fight. Certainly the most difficult fight in this run, but also probably the most difficult in the game. It is a fight that has a lot of randomness to it. There are a number of patterns where you can't do any or much damage, especially with the melee build that I have built. But if you get good patterns, the fight can be over very, very quickly. So it's a bit of an RNG fight, but it is a pretty fun one once you get the hang of it. All right, so we have a little bit of dialogue here after that initial cutscene, and then we'll get right into the fight. All right, here we go. Now, there's a bit of extra lore that I have not really given you, which I will leave to those who are actually playing the game. This is a good pattern, potentially. Very much depends on the placement of these orbs of safety. Unfortunately, we didn't get very good placement there, but that's okay. That attack is one that you can't really do anything at all about. That attack also, it's possible to deal a little bit of damage, but not very much. That one as well. That's a bit better. I misjudged where the... Alright, so you may see her down in the red and think, great. That's actually just the first phase of the fight. So there's 2 more phases here, and the second one here is one where we can get quite a lot of different patterns, probably one of the more RNG ones. This is actually a fantastic first attack. As you see, we did at least a third, maybe more like half. And this is pretty much the perfect attack to follow it up. Okay, I didn't see... Yes, that's immediately onto the third phase. Okay, so for the third phase, we drop down. And once again, the third phase is actually quite a bit like the first. So we'll see how this goes. There are basically faster, harder versions of the attacks from the first phase, along with the same orb attack that we just dealt with. So you can see a lot of that burst damage. Once again, faster, harder version of the attack in the first phase. Can't do any damage during this attack. Shoot. Okay. Okay, that's it. That is time. All right, very nice. So the in-game time will keep running for a little bit through this cutscene, but the actual game ends right here on this stab. Alrighty. So yeah, that was Aeterna Noctis in Aeterna mode, any percent. This is actually a world record, which is kind of fun. I didn't expect my commentated run to be such a massive PB, but you know, there it is. So I'm glad I got to showcase this. I think this was a good time. I had a lot of fun with it, and I hope that that you all enjoyed watching. This was great. I'll leave the lore to the casual playthrough for any of you willing to delve in. But yeah, this was a good run.